Hi everyone. It's great to see you again. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. Today, we have a brand new story to share with you. So, let's get started. We were in the middle of another fight that didn't make sense, which seems to be happening more and more often these days. It all started with a small thing, like me asking her if she wanted to hang out with me that night. When I offered to put aside work and other things that were bothering me to focus on us, I thought I was being kind. But I didn't get thanks, I got a sharp, dismissive answer. Her tone was cold, like she had practiced it. Her arms were crossed and her eyes were fixed on mine. It looked like she was daring me to disagree with what she said. At first, I thought I heard her wrong. While I tried to understand what she had just said, I blinked. What? Partly laughing and partly scared, I asked. What does that mean? She didn't move. It really means what it sounds like, she yelled. I'm fed up with you acting like you have to do it. I don't owe you anything just because we're married. It felt like someone had ripped the ground from under me. For 8 years, my husband had given up things, stayed up late, and worked extra hours to make our life possible. She told me straight out that my wants and feelings didn't matter. That trust, closeness, and teamwork, the things that made our marriage work, were not required. I was going to fight. When she turned me down, I wanted to tell her how badly that hurt. But I couldn't say anything. I just stood there and stared at her as if a stranger had popped in my wife's body out of nowhere. The fight wasn't going on for long. She left the room, leaving me standing there with a lot on my mind. I tried to forget about it and tell myself she was just upset or stressed. I knew better, though. It wasn't the first time she made me feel like I didn't matter. Her words were so clear for the first time. I didn't get much sleep that night. The talk kept going over and over in my mind as I tried to figure out what went wrong. Did I miss the signs? Had I done something to make her leave? Or had I been lying to myself the whole time, thinking we were still a team? My anger had changed into something else by morning. Decide. Perhaps I didn't owe her the many sacrifices I'd been making to keep our marriage going if she didn't owe me closeness. In my relationship, I wasn't going to let myself feel like a beggar any longer. I didn't say anything to her right away. I began to really notice how we talked to each other, how she treated me, and how little she seemed to care about how hard I worked at making our life together work. I was more and more sure that something needed to change as I watched more. I still didn't know what that change would look like, though. I only knew that I wasn't going to let what she said about me decide how valuable I was. Not any longer. Things felt different in the days after that talk. Inside me, something changed. I began to see our marriage differently. Instead of a partnership, it seemed like we were always balancing each other out, with me giving more to keep things level. It made me more angry the more I thought about it. I thought back to the late nights I worked to save up for the down payment on our house. She told me back then how proud she was and how lucky she was to have someone who cared so much about their future. I kept those words close to my heart and worked harder because I thought I was doing it for us. When I thought about it now, I felt like I had been lied to. Like the things I gave up were quietly erased as soon as they were no longer useful to her. It wasn't just the money either. It was little things that happened every day. The times I had to break plans with friends because she told me she had to be at home. I did chores or fixed things around the house on the weekends to make her life easy. I didn't get enough sleep some nights because she wanted to talk about work and I didn't want her to feel alone. Oh, and intimacy. For me, that wasn't just about sex. It was about being able to connect with others and know that my work was appreciated. It looks like that was too much to ask, though. I began to keep track of the mismatch. Not on paper, but in my mind. I would write down every time she ignored me or brushed off something important to me. Like the night I got home from work excited about a new project and she barely looked up from her phone. Or the time I made her favorite dinner after a tough week, and all she did was say, "Thank you," and leave. I don't think she even noticed that I was pulling away. That might have been the worst part. When I stopped trying so hard, it was so easy for her to forget about me. I sat in my car outside the house one night and looked at the dark windows. I wasn't sure if it was worth it to go inside. That thought was so stupid. It was also my home, you know. But I felt like a guest there. Like someone whose appearance didn't really matter. I thought about what she said. How she didn't have to be close to me. And I finally asked myself the question I had been putting off. What did she owe me? Excuse me. Much thanks. Work together. Or was that just something I thought we had? I remembered how we used to talk about everything and couldn't keep our hands off of each other when we were first dating. I missed that time with you, but the more I tried to remember it, the more it seemed like a different life. I didn't go inside right away that night. I sat in the car and looked at the man looking back at me in the rearview mirror, trying to figure out who he was. When we got married, I didn't see the guy who was full of hopes and dreams. I saw someone who was tired. Someone who got nothing back from a relationship after years of giving everything they had. That's when it clicked. What she said didn't make me mad. I was mad at her because I knew she was right. She didn't have to be close to me. If that was true, though, I didn't owe her the version of myself that had done everything I could to keep us together. When I walked through the door that night, I felt different. Not mad. Not sad. Done. She didn't even seem to notice that something was broken, so I told her to stop. Being honest about that hurt, but it also helped me understand things better in a strange way. If she wasn't owed me closeness, then maybe I wasn't owed her the version of myself that had worked hard for years to make things work. It was a small shift at first. It got old for me to ask her how her day was. Not because I was mean, but because I realized I didn't want to hear the same old complaints about coworkers or schedules. I wanted to see what would happen if I didn't keep the discussion going all the time. I think she didn't even notice at first. She was so used to me making noise in the background that my departure didn't stand out. She wouldn't even look up while I sat in the living room and scrolled through my phone or changed TV stations. But as the days went by, I could see that it was beginning to sink in. She would say little things. These days you've been quiet. Or is everything okay? I'd just shrug and ignore them, though. I was not going to let her use this against me by making me explain myself while she pretended that nothing she said had caused this in the first place. It was making her mad, I could tell. She started to poke fun at me more, complaining about how I folded the laundry and not filling up the gas tank. She even said I was distracted while we were having talks that weren't happening. I could have risen to the challenge, but I let her words roll off of me. That game wasn't fun for me anymore. Then something strange took place. She began to try. At first, he was nice about it, bring me coffee when I was working late and suggesting that we watch a movie together like we used to. But I didn't grab the little bits of attention that came her way. Instead, I let her work hang in the air without recognizing it. Not because I wanted to punish her, but because I wanted to know if it was real or just a way to make things better without dealing with the issue. Every day, the stress got worse. When she reached out, I would pull away just enough to surprise her. It became more and more clear that she didn't know what to do when I stopped fixing everything the more she tried to stay in charge. She asked me straight out one night, "Are you mad at me?" There was less noise in her voice than normal, like she was scared of the answer. I looked at her and told her the one thing I hadn't said since the fight night, "I'm done trying harder than you." I saw how hard the words hit her. She opened her mouth to answer, but this time she didn't say anything. I felt like I was in charge for the first time in a long time. Because I had finally stopped saying sorry for wanting more than she was ready to give. Not because I had won an argument. There was a lot of stress in the house the next morning after I told her I was done trying harder than she was. But she wasn't calmer in the way I was used to seeing her. This wasn't the cold, rude silence she had learned to use over the years. It felt different. Something was off, like she was waiting for me to break down and explain myself. I didn't, though. As if nothing had changed, I went about my day. I made coffee, checked my email, and then I left for work without giving her a second thought. That was the start of it. Around noon, the text messages started. Let's talk. I didn't pay attention to it. Let's not act like this isn't happening, please. I didn't read that one. She was already in the living room moving like an animal in a cage when I got home. Her speech was about to begin, but I stopped her before it began. I could tell she had been practicing it. What do you need? I asked as I set my keys down on the counter. She narrowed her eyes. What do I need? Don't you get it? You're acting strange in our own home. What's going on with you? I laughed. Not since it was funny, but since it was impossible to believe. What's wrong with me? Are you sure about this? I'm just doing what you say, sweetheart. You made it clear what this marriage isn't the night you told me you didn't have to be close to me. I thought for a second that she was going to say she didn't say it because her face was red. She didn't, though. She put up a defense instead. I don't either. I have the right to set limits. That might be your problem, not mine, if you can't handle it. I could feel my anger rising, but I forced it down. I wasn't going to let this turn into another fight where no one got anything done. I said in a calm voice, "You're right. You don't have to be close to me. But let me ask you something. Do I have to make a promise? What do I owe you? Do I owe you something more than just being polite?" I saw something crack in her face for the first time when her eyes got bigger. Fear. She didn't answer. I kept going. If that's the case, I might not have to pay for our dates, be there for you emotionally, or even come home at the end of the day. You've already made it clear that you don't want us, so maybe I don't owe you putting us first. That's when she lost it. It's not fair. You're making this mean something it's not. Just gave me some space. I always cared about you. I shot back, then show it. Because all I see right now is someone who wants the perks of being married but doesn't want to do the work. There was silence in the room. It looked like she was going to say something, but she couldn't. She had the chance to fight for us and show me I was wrong, but she didn't. She sat down on the couch instead and buried her face in her hands. She said in a whisper, "I don't know how we got here. And to be honest, neither did I. I only knew that the woman I married didn't feel like the person sitting next to me. And I might not have felt like the same man either. But I didn't sit down with her and comfort her like I used to. Instead, I got up and left. Because I wasn't going to clean up the mess for the first time in a long time. That night, I didn't go back into the living room. I locked myself in the guest room, which became my new place, and left her to think on the couch. It wasn't an exciting or clever way to get her attention. I was the one who drew the line. I needed some space, even if it was just a thin wall. We didn't talk much over the next few days. We didn't talk to each other in the house unless we happened to walk by each other in the kitchen or hallway. She tried to start talking again a few times, but I always cut her off. I wasn't prepared to talk yet. I used that time to figure out what I wanted instead. I asked myself if I could keep living this way, stuck in a marriage that felt more like a contract than a friendship. It made me wonder if all the years I had spent on us were still worth it. But most of all, I thought about who I wanted to be going forward and how this marriage had changed me. That I didn't like the person I had became clear to me very quickly. I was worn out. I'm done giving more than I get. Tired of trying to get love that should have come easily. Was fed up with feeling like the only one fighting for something that looked like it was too broken to fix. That's when I made up my mind. After another day of being quiet, I walked into the living room one evening to find her sitting there with her phone in her hand, acting like she didn't see me. But the way her shoulders tightened up told me she was ready to wait. getting ready for me to finally speak. I didn't dance around it for no reason. I told them I could no longer do this. She jerked her head up and her eyes went wide. What? I said this again while moving my hand between us. Let's not act like everything is fine when it's not. I can't keep giving while you act like being here is enough. I stopped her before she could speak. I told her I was no longer mad. I'm not even hurt. I'm done. I'm not sure if that means we are breaking up. If it means getting help. Or if it really means something else. I know I can't live this way forever, though. She looked really scared for the first time in weeks. What? Are you going to leave? I gave a shrug. Perhaps. Perhaps not. I think we need some time apart to figure that out, though. She had tears in her eyes. I almost gave up for a split second. I almost put my arms around her and told her that we'd figure it out, just like we always did. But then I thought of what she said. That she didn't have to be close to me. The fire that had been fueling my progress was lit again. I said in a firm voice, "This isn't just about you. It's clear what you don't owe me. I am now making it clear what I will not give anymore without getting something in return." I walked toward the door with a bag that I had already packed. She didn't try to stop me. I left the room and shut the door behind me, and she just sat there and cried quietly. I felt something I hadn't felt in years as I drove away. Thanks. It wasn't because it was over. But because I finally felt like I had a choice for the first time. After I left, I didn't check my phone for a long time. In the end, I knew she'd text or call. I wasn't ready for the words she had planned for me, though. I had to think for a while. To breathe without the weight of what she thought would happen. Or the steady weight of duty on my shoulders. That night, I stayed at a cheap hotel. Looking at the ceiling for a long time. And going over everything that had happened before this. Over and over, I asked myself the same things. Had I made the right choice? Was this the end of my marriage? Or did we just need this restart to fix what was wrong? By morning, I still didn't know what to do. But I was sure of one thing. I did not want to return. It was strange to be apart for the first few days. It was almost like I was living someone else's life. I ate dinner by myself. Sat there in quiet, with no TV going off in the background. And didn't hear her walk down the hall as they went to bed. In the beginning, it felt good. But then the feeling of being alone began to grow. It's not that I missed her. But I missed the idea of how we used to be. On the third night, she called me. I almost didn't answer. But I did it because I was interested. "Hey," she said in a soft, unsure voice. "Hey." After that, we didn't talk to each other for a long time. I could hear an unsteady and shaky breathing coming from her. Also, I knew she was sad. I wasn't ready to let down my guard, though, just because she seemed weak. She finally said, "I don't know what to do." What she said hurt more than I thought it would. This was the same woman who always seemed so sure of herself. So unwilling to own up to mistakes. I was caught off guard when she said she didn't know the answers. I said, "I don't either. I know I can't live the way we were, though. I can't either." We had agreed on something for months before that. It felt like progress for a short time. But then the truth hit. The conversation stopped once more. In the weeks that followed, we talked more. But the space between us stayed the same. She told me to go home and try therapy before we gave up for good. I wanted that too, in a way. But I couldn't forget how we got here in the first place. It hurt so much to be told that my needs didn't matter. That closeness was something she could avoid at any cost. I'll never forget the nights when I felt like no one could see me in my own home. Or the anger that had been building up for years. I didn't rush back, though. I put limits in place instead. This time, real ones. It had to be different the next time we tried. I wasn't going to keep following her around or pleading for attention. She had to prove to me that she was ready to work hard. That she wanted to fix the things we had broken. It looked like she was trying for a while. I wasn't ready to go to therapy with her, so she did it by herself. As she thought about what she had said and done, she sent me long texts. She even stopped blaming me for being so far away. She made me want to believe her, but something still didn't feel right. Maybe the fact that she didn't try until I left made her want to. Maybe it was realizing I couldn't trust her not to go back to old habits once things calmed down. The choice wasn't as big as I thought it would be in the end. There was neither a heated fight nor a tearful farewell. We both knew that we had grown apart and would never be able to get back together. After a month, I filed for divorce. She didn't fight it. It hurt to end that part of my life, but I knew I had finally made the right choice when I walked away. I did something I hadn't done in years. I guess only time will tell if it was the right choice or not. But this is all I know for now. No one owes me more than they are willing to give back. Not any longer.